Now joining me from the trading floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange to discuss the market is Victor Ogiemwonyi, who is the CEO of Partnership Investment, and we're going to get some detail on the day's trade. Thank you so much, Victor, for joining me today. Hello, Victor, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here. I'm hearing you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Great. Now let's get straight into it by taking a look at the headline rate of headline inflation rate of 9.5% for February that has recently come out. And now, if inflation continues to stay below 10% this year, I mean, obviously, I know tomorrow we're expecting the MPC decision as well, but if that inflation rate continues to stay below 10%, could we then see a shift, a portfolio shift to the equity space?
Yes, that is what is expected, because not only is the 9.5%, it's also, you know, the inflation is actually heading down. If you realize it was as high as 12% at some point during the last year. So we are seeing a inflation that is trending down, and that is a good something that we should take into consideration when we are looking at the equity markets.
Okay, now let's move on to the
MPC rate is expected to come down, yes.
Okay, now let's move on to the stock market, Victor. We heard of Wema Bank's plans to raise 35 billion naira by private placement. Now, we've seen a stellar performance by that stock. We've seen approximately 130% this year alone, and I guess that that is also pretty questionable returns, especially as the bank's fundamentals are not as equally impressive. So it'll be interesting to know your view on that stock and whether investors will continue to be cautious now about that stock's performance.
No, you know that Wema Bank was more or less one of the banks that opted to be a regional bank because they couldn't come up with all the capital to be a national bank. Now that this news is out that they want to raise, about several billions this year to be able to boost up their capital, I think that is good news for the market. And of course, you also realize that they've just been added to the market making list, which also makes them a good stock to that people expect that there's now a backstop, so traders will be more interested in trading it. Okay. That is what has happened in the stock. That's the reason why it's going up.
Okay, now we've seen a lot of positivity from companies in regards to private placements. I mean, we obviously just mentioned Wema. We also know that Owando recently completed a rights issue, and there's also some talk of rights issue offers from the likes of Prestige and WAPIC and Transcorp. However, we're not seeing any IPOs or public offers come in. And I guess it does raise a question as to why companies are still very cautious.
That's the word, cautious. They're very cautious because they are not too sure that investors are jumping into the market fully yet. Nobody wants to do an IPO that will be undersubscribed. I think the rights issue is a safer bet, and that's why most of the companies are going for a rights issue right now.
Okay, now there's obviously NSE's plans as well to hit 150 trillion naira in market capitalization by 2016. Now, at the moment, market cap stands at approximately 10.6 billion, which is, of course, pretty far off. So it will be good to know your view on whether you feel that this target is actually achievable.
Well, I think it's achievable. There are so many reasons to look at that is achievable. First, some of the reforms that have been put in place, they are already beginning to pay off. And then don't forget that the news on the Nigerian economy is that it's very stable now. The currency has been stable. The inflation is coming down. And then, of course, there's a lot of foreign investments coming in. It is hoped that most of the companies that are not willing to list in the last 4 or 5 years will all be coming to the market. And then, of course, there's also a push to bring in the telecom companies. I think these are positive signs, and there's no doubt that if all these companies come to list, and of course there's a faster pace of privatization, most of the energy companies that have just been privatized are all supposed to also be listing in just the next few years. So we expect that that figure is doable.
Okay, now one stock that I just have to mention, WAPIC. Obviously, I mentioned that stock earlier in regards to rights issues. Now, that stock is actually the best performing stock on the stock exchange in terms of year-to-date performance. We have a performance of 145% gains seen so far. And you'll be interested to know what has driven this activity. I mean, last week alone, we saw that stock go up 20%. And is this actually sustainable for that stock?
Well, you have to look at WAPIC is going on the basis of the fact that, you know, it used to be one of the subsidiaries of Intercontinental. Since Intercontinental has merged with Access Bank, you now have a bigger player who is behind the stock. And then, of course, all the bank insurance business is going to the stock. I think investors are looking at the fact that WAPIC is well run, it's been here for a very long time, and it will continue to do well. Whether it will sustain this very steep upward movement, I don't know about that. It might just, you know, but it will continue to do better than average, maybe not at the same steep rise that we have seen recently.